early and I didn't want to go somewhere, and then I would go and have an attitude the whole time, and they would be like, well, you shouldn't even came. And she right, I should. I should have stayed at home, because now I done made her little time terrible. Me being up here with a sour face and, pounding and all this whole type of stuff, acting weak. I should have stayed at home. And so I'm pretty sure he's been going over there acting the same way.
The Choice. 90.9 KTSU, Houston's community station.
What's going on, Houston? Welcome to another edition of Real World Real Talk. I'm your host, Dr. DZ Cofield, and you're listening to The Choice, 90.9 KTSU, your community station, and KTSUradio.com. I want to thank my friends from near and far for listening on tonight. Tonight is going to be a special edition show, and, it's going to be It's going to be an Express Yourself edition of our show on tonight. So I want you to get ready to call in 713-313-4354. That's 713-313-4354. That's the number to call. And I want to hear what's on your mind. There's so much going on. And I know some of you are just bubbling and burning to share how you feel about what's been happening, whether it's the elections or, COVID-19, Thanksgiving traveling, maybe the Thanksgiving holidays. I don't know what's on your mind, but I would love to hear from you tonight. The number again is 713-313-4354. A couple of things going on that I'd like to talk about just a little bit. First and foremost, United anticipated Thanksgiving travel to be off the chain, and they added 1,400 flights to their pared down schedule, and millions of people flew out between Tuesday and Thursday. And they're expecting now many of those millions to return home on today. And so to say that airports are going to be jammed and super spreader events will potentially be set up in airports is, I think, an understatement. It's absolutely insane. And for those of you who may have family members with you, or maybe you traveled to see family, I hope you took all the precautions you could, and then some. We're seeing record numbers of people dying, but it's not just the deaths. I mean, the deaths are bad enough. We just surpassed 100,000 new daily COVID cases for the 27th consecutive day. The 27th consecutive day. And even though we are doing better with treating people and keeping people from dying, so the percentages of people who have gotten sick and have died, those percentages are going down. We still have not fully measured and appreciated the underlying health effects of COVID-19 and what it's causing in terms of people's lives. From the brain fog, we see people who didn't die, but they needed a double lung transplant. We see people who were on a respirator for weeks and now have to learn how to walk again. So there's just so many things that we have not even taken into account when it comes to this disease. Have some issues with education. Just read today that the New York City school district is going to allow young students to come back to their schools December 7th. They are looking at pre-K 3, pre-K 4, and then kindergarten through 5th grade. So anyone who is 6th grade or up, they will be staying home. 5th grade and under, they will be coming back to school. And the belief of the Mayor de Blasio, is that the young children are not nearly as affected and or contagious. Man, I don't know how you feel about that. I really have mixed emotions. I understand that, number one, you really can't leave those young children home by themselves, and I get that. But my question is, why are you bringing them back December the 7th? I mean, why are you bringing them back? Because they're basically going to be in school a week and a half, maybe, in terms of real days. And all you're doing is bringing those children out of their homes. So if their homes are infected, you're bringing them to a gathering place. And then if they pick up something at the school, they're going back home. So I'm not sure why they're not just allowing students just to stay home, period. If you're going to let older kids stay home, why not let the younger kids stay home? Because it's not like those who have older siblings, they're going to be separated from their older siblings when they go home, right? I believe it was Clear Creek, if I'm not mistaken, and I will verify that said any student who has failed the first 6 weeks plus or is failing has to come back to school after the holidays. They have to come back to the brick and mortar. There's no choice in the matter. And, you know, some would say, man, that's a good step. We still haven't heard from HISD regarding what they're going to do. We reached out to several school districts to hear from superintendents, and we didn't get any responses. And I think part of that is because they're really just gathering the data. And the truth of the matter is, we are where we have never been before. And so they don't know what to do. And one of the challenges is, you know, when you take a brick and mortar structure and transfer it to a digital platform and think it transfers one-to-one, you're making a tragic mistake. Even businesses who are successful on the digital platform, e-commerce, there are characteristics to their brick and mortar stores, and they try to make it and bring about as much affinity as possible so people don't have the consternation, the fear, the anxiety of trying to move through the digital platform in order to shop. But it is a different animal. It's a different animal. And so if you'd like to talk about that, we can talk about that as well. 30 former Republican members of Congress are now calling on President Trump to accept the election. And he has accepted it, but they want him to just say, you know, I'm going to concede. He's just not going to let it go. And so now he is threatening to file a lawsuit with the Supreme Court. At every level in the judicial process, cases have been thrown out for lack of merit, lack of evidence. And here's what's interesting about those who are followers of 45. And it's interesting how we can live in denial of just the facts. In the media, they're talking about fraud, widespread fraud, and there are legal implications for even using the term fraud. So much so that when they get in the courtroom, they do not use the word fraud. They do not say there is a widespread fraud or conspiracy going on to rob President Trump of the election. If you read the transcripts from the various court hearings and the court filings, the word fraud does not appear. As a matter of fact, they're going out of their way to say we are not accusing the United States or election officials of widespread fraud. Because if you did that, then you almost have to invalidate everything, right? And if you invalidated everything, then you'd have to validate the elections on the lower level below the president. So if the Republicans wanted to say that, then whatever seats that they gained in the House would also be gone. Well, they don't want to do that, right? They don't want to do that. So it's this argument, that, hey, and the media is doing it, man. I mean, people like Fox News and others, they're doing it. They're talking about fraud, but they're not talking about it in the courtroom, because if you make that kind of accusation and you don't have facts, then guess what happens? Your case gets thrown out, which is what has been happening. And if you claim that somebody has committed fraud and they haven't, you name the person, right? You present the facts, you present the evidence, and saying, oh, well, in Detroit, or in Philadelphia, they covered up the windows. So the poll watchers couldn't watch them counting the ballots. Well, first of all, they didn't cover up the windows to keep poll watchers out. Poll watchers were inside, right? They were watching the polls when the polls were active. And those who were there to count or watch votes and watch the process were there from both the Republicans and the Democrats. People covered up windows because people were sitting there taking pictures and videotaping. And it had sensitive information like people's addresses and things like that. And they asked them repeatedly not to do that outside of the windows, and they refused to stop doing it. And so they covered up the windows. They've recounted some, and it's interesting because I think in one county, the president gained 41 votes. In another county, President-elect Biden gained 132 votes, right? So in a state that he has lost by, in some instances, well over 100,000, you gain 41 votes in one county. Like you didn't even overturn the state. And then in another county, the president-elect gained 132. It's like, come on, when is enough? So if you want to talk about that, we can as well. Your favorite Thanksgiving dessert. Hopefully you have recovered from your self-induced food coma over the holidays. I know typically in our family, historically, people go hard in the paint, man, that first round. And then it's like everybody just passes out, and then they wake up and then they go back for round two. Some of you did round two and maybe a little bit of round three. What's interesting about surveys, and surveys have been criticized a lot because of the election and the election results, even though at the end of the day, some of those surveys were actually correct. A lot of criticism about the surveys occurred on election night before a lot of the mail-in ballots and the like were counted. But it's interesting. People talked about how wrong surveys are. So here, I got a survey that's I think is wrong. I don't know how y'all feel. I think it's wrong. I think it's biased. I don't think it represents diversity in this country, but that's just me. Online poll, 2,300 people. What's your favorite Thanksgiving dessert? Number one, pumpkin pie. Number one, pumpkin pie. So you already, in my mind, it's already biased. Don't laugh, and don't judge me. I'm just saying it's already biased, right? 41% pumpkin pie. Number two, apple pie. 41% pumpkin pie, 29% apple pie. Number three, pecan pie. 23% pecan pie. Number four, sweet potato pie, 9%. Now, come on now. See, I always wonder, how do I miss these surveys? Because they didn't ask me. Then it went 7% decorated cookies, 5% apple cake, 2% pumpkin pie, and marshmallow cupcakes. Marshmallow cupcakes, y'all. I've never heard. I've never had. I've never marshmallow cupcakes. I've never heard of that for a Christmas dessert. And then 4% other. So now apple cake. I'm not saying I'm against apple cake. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, man, I'm Pound cake, right? That should be on there. Some pound cake. Um, I wasn't in that poll, so I don't know what your favorite dessert is. Thanksgiving dish you can't live without. Here's another survey. 25% said turkey, 24% said stuffing. And for those of you who are very literal, stuffing and dressing, I think, is considered the same thing. I'm not saying they're the same thing. I'm just saying, for the sake of the survey, if this was Family Feud, it would say stuffing / dressing. Okay. 15% mashed potatoes with gravy. 11%, they go that pumpkin pie again, man. They go that pumpkin pie. 6% can't do without sweet potato pie. 4%, oh, I might have made it on this one. Cranberry sauce. You know, some people like their cranberry sauce with their dressing or stuffing, and some people like their dressing and stuffing with their cranberry sauce. I'm one of the latter. I love cranberry sauce. So here's another serious survey that was taken, and this was around the second COVID-19 stimulus package. There are a lot of people who are struggling and suffering. A lot of people who are in lines to get food. We have been at our food bank location on our campus. We have served record numbers of people since this pandemic. Our food distribution has gone up about 2,000%. And, you know, we've had hundreds of families who come through, and we're small and very intentional about serving our community, right? We believe we have an opportunity and a responsibility to serve people who live in our community. And so we work very hard to do that. But we recognize we get calls from all over the city and from people who are in need. The question was asked, when, if ever, do you believe Congress will pass a bill for a second COVID-19 stimulus package? And I think a lot of this, to be perfectly honest with you, is going to be dependent upon whether or not the 2 Senate seats in Georgia are maintained and remain Republican, or if they switch and they become Democratic. And the reason I say that is because if they remain in the hands of the Republicans, that means Mitch McConnell, the senator from Kentucky, remains as the majority leader. And the person who is the majority leader is the person who sets the agenda. And so, needless to say, President-elect Biden will have a difficult time getting things through with Mitch McConnell heading up the Senate. If those seats flip and 2 Democrats come in, then the Democrats will have the majority, because the tiebreaker, who is the head of the Senate, will be the Vice President Kamala Harris. And so very, very important. As a matter of fact, President Trump has already announced that he will be going to Georgia to campaign on behalf of the 2 senators who are running for their seats. They're in a runoff. What's interesting is, and we're talking about the power of voting, we can also add to that the necessity of voting down ballot, because if everyone who voted for President Biden voted for the 2 Democratic candidates, they would have won. But a lot of people went in and voted for Vice President Biden and didn't vote down ticket. A lot of people went in and voted for President Trump and didn't vote down ticket. And so neither one of them got a majority of the total number of votes cast. And so that's why there's a runoff. I was wondering about that because I was like, well, hey, man, they voted. Democrat ran against a Republican. Whoever won, they won. But like, no, they didn't get 50% of the total vote because some people didn't vote. So the question, and if a bill for second COVID-19 stimulus package, when will that be passed? 21% of people said, I don't think Congress will ever pass a bill for a second COVID-19 stimulus package. 18% said after January 2021. 14% said before the end of the year. 11% in January 2021. So 18% said after January. 11% said in January. 7% said within the next month, which actually would be before the end of the year. And 4% said within the next 2 months. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. What do you think? Hey, are you going to take the vaccine when it comes out? You know, everybody is excited about the vaccines and the efficacy rate, how they are being touted. What do you think? I see Pat and Danielle are online listening. And there are those of you who are listening, of course, on the landline. What do you think? You think, are you going to take the exam? You're going to be in line first? Now, in all honesty, you know, when they laid out the list, I don't know if you saw the list of what they're proposing, what some states are proposing to be the order in which people get these vaccines. But when they laid out the order, I was literally like last on the list. I mean, you know, when they started, it was like, you know, healthcare workers, you know, first responders, and, you know, they're going on a list. And some have said, you know, those who are living in long-term care facilities, and, you know, those who are over 65, and those who are over, and they just kept on going down the list. And it was like, wow. So I was like 7th, I think, on that list. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not running up to take the vaccine. I'd love to hear what you think. I have my thoughts about it, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. 713-313-4354. 713-313-4354. It is 6:22. Man, it's got a little chilly outside. It's 54 degrees. And tomorrow, if I'm not, it's supposed to get down to about 46, and the high tomorrow is just going to be 63. And I know for some of you who are listening and you're in Chicago and you're in New York and you're in Colorado, you're like, whatever, that's not cold. I got that. But it's cold to those of us who have gotten thin blood and we live in Texas. That's just the way it is. Let's go to our phone line. Welcome to Real World, Real Talk. What's on your mind? Roberto, ¿cómo está, man? Good. Yeah. Yeah, Roberto, I think you're raising an interesting point. I do think there was a tempered enthusiasm, depending on who you talk to. I think there were, without question, I think the numbers are saying something like 20% of African-American men voted for Trump. And so I don't want to focus on the 20%. I'll focus on the 80% who did. But there were some concerns with both the record of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in terms of law enforcement, in terms of her role as a prosecutor, especially in California and the three strikes law, and just a number of things like that really made some Black men uncomfortable. In terms of Black women, I think without question there was an enthusiasm. And I will say this, and I think you speak for a lot of people. There were a lot of people, younger people, who didn't vote for the Biden-Harris ticket because of Biden, because they just saw that as another old white guy. That they were excited and they were enthused to see diversity on the ticket, to see someone new, something new that could come out of this election that had not been seen historically. And I will say this to you, white women voted for Donald Trump at a 53% clip. There were those that said and tried to insinuate that Black women let her down in 2016, but that's not true. It was white women. And what's interesting is white women voted for Donald Trump this go around 55%. So more white women voted for Donald Trump percentage wise than voted for him in 2016. All of that repenting that they did after the first year that Trump was in office, none of that showed up at the election booth when it came time to vote. What's interesting is, and I will hold to this, if you had a motivated young crowd like you did in 2008 when Obama ran, and if you had a motivated, excited young crowd in 2016 like you had this time. Now, there were extenuating circumstances. There was, of course, the lightning rod that was the death of George Floyd, and we just celebrated the 6-month anniversary of his murder. And I shouldn't say celebrated, commemorated the murder of George Floyd 6 months ago. And then you had with that Ahmaud Arbery, and you had Breonna Taylor. And so all of those things, I think, motivated people and galvanized people. And we saw celebrities and we saw entertainers and we saw athletes getting involved in the election process like never before, which I think is why we had record numbers. But for me, I think those are the two main, those are the main issues. That I don't want to say two. The main issue was just her prosecutorial record. And that was a concern by some, but I don't think that kept them. I don't think that kept Black people from voting for her. I still think they voted for her. Well, I think there's a couple of things. One, and I appreciated President-elect Biden in offering his apology for the crime bill and many of the things that he said on the Senate floor at the time. And I think what was interesting to me, Roberto, was the fact that none of us live a life where we don't make mistakes, and none of us live a life that we can't look back and say, I would do some things different. And so I appreciated that. The other thing I appreciated is, and this is as quiet as it's kept, there were many, 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 many Black elected officials who were quiet when Joe Biden was saying all of that on the Senate floor. There was no uproar. There was no uprising. I'm talking about masses of people, masses of elected officials. They were quiet. They weren't saying anything. Right? Exactly. When we saw society attack, gangster rap as it was labeled, and groups like NWA and other groups like that. Man, when we saw those groups being attacked, man, there were Black elected officials at the front of the line attacking them. And so, this idea of we know better, and when you know better, you should do better. I think, the jury is still out. I heard people, and I know you've heard this, Roberto, because you're an avid listener of KTSU. There are people who are saying, the Democrats are really to blame more than the Republicans. And my argument is, wherever we are as as people of color, for the most part, we've gotten there on the backs of Democrats. I don't think we're as far as we should be, and I don't think as much has been done as could have been done or should have been done. But outside of Abraham Lincoln, we don't have a good track record with Republicans. We just don't. I mean, it's just the bottom line. We don't. And have Democrats done all that they can? Absolutely not. I don't believe they have. I don't believe they've been held to the fire. And I have my own opinions about why that has happened. And I think the biggest part is we as a community, and I'm talking about the African American community now, we have let our elected officials off the hook. Women have not done it. Women have kept fighting, and they don't care who's in office, Republican or Democrat. They don't have permanent friends or permanent enemies. They have a permanent interest. Jewish people, man, they keep fighting. They don't care who's in office, Republican or Democrat. They keep fighting for their rights, and Israel's always on their agenda. The LGBTQ community, they are fighting. They don't care who's in office. They are going to keep fighting because they have not become satisfied with whatever progress has been made. And the truth of the matter is, African American people in this country, and many of whom upper middle class, highly educated, have become satisfied with where they are, to the point that we parrot the words of our oppressors. And we have taken their message and made their message our message. And so we'll see what happens, man. What do you think? Roberto? Did I lose him? All right. Welcome to Real World Real Talk. I guess I lost Roberto. Phone call must have dropped. Welcome to Real World Real Talk. What's on your mind? All right. I was going to say you need to turn your phone down. Number 713-313-4354. Many institutions end up mandating certain vaccines. I will deal with it then. You know what? I'm telling you what, man, this vaccine thing is really, really kind of crazy. And it's going to be interesting. We're hearing medical personnel saying they're not going to be running, even though they are at the front of the line, that they're not going to be running up front. Some of them are not anxious to be the first ones to take this test, take the vaccine. So we'll see. Let's go back to our phone lines. Welcome to Real World Real Talk. What's on your mind? Hey, how are you doing, Cheryl? So Cheryl, here's my question, and I don't know if you would agree with me on this, but this is what I think is just really strange. People, first of all, there are people who are in denial, right? We're hearing stories of people who are on their deathbed who are still saying COVID-19 is a hoax, and they are dying of COVID-19, which to me just reveals the insanity of some people. But this piece is really gets me. It's like, if you want to reopen the economy, wear your mask. If you wear your mask and you practice physical distance, you have a greater likelihood of opening up the economy, and you have a greater likelihood of people being able to go back to work. But if you don't wear a mask, the only option is to shut everything down, because our healthcare system is going to be overwhelmed by the number of cases. And we're seeing that across the country, even across the world. So what do you think is the challenge to get people to wear a mask and to physically distance and to do all of the things that we are finally being told to do by the CDC and other doctors? Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your call. Thank you, Cheryl. I think she's spot on. I've had people ask me, Pastor, when are you going to reopen? I've had white pastor friends of mine who have been pressured by their congregants to reopen, even if it's 25%. And I've just told them, I said, look, we've buried 2 of our members who passed because of COVID-19. And we've had 5 to 7 more who were sick who have recovered. I'm not interested in doing any more funerals. It's just that simple. And so, and then I've asked them, to Ms. Cheryl's point, hey, have you buried any members who had COVID-19? And typically I get a no. And I said, okay, well, when you do, come back and talk to me. Welcome to Real World, Real Talk. What's on your mind? I'm good. Okay, can you turn your radio down? Got a little echo. Yeah, some feedback. All right. Okay.
Even those who have not received a court date are currently in there, can't make bond, eligible for parole. And I know that, our society normally, sheds, a darker light on these individuals, which are still human beings that have family members. And I wanted to find out where your take is on that. And I'll hang up.
So let me make sure I'm hearing you correctly. You're talking about people who are incarcerated being the first to get the vaccine?
Well, no. I was just saying, as far as when you listed the people who would be eligible for in the order that they would be handing the vaccine out. These are people I'm sure are probably at the bottom of the.
Oh yeah. No, they weren't. They weren't even on the list.
Wow.
They weren't. I'll be honest with you, they weren't on the list. And by the time I got on the list, and when I say on the list, I'm talking about just a regular person who is under 65, who may have 1 or 2 underlying health conditions, but I'm not considered unhealthy. I'm basically on schedule to get a vaccine the end of next year. Especially when you're hearing them talk about you needing at least 2 vaccines or 2 doses of the vaccine. That's that's a lot of time. That's a lot of vaccine, and you're talking about not just the 355 plus million people in this country, but you're also talking about people around the world. Because these vaccines, all of these vaccines were not developed or created here, and they're all not going to stay here. And so, when you start talking about other people in the world who are infected with COVID-19, those of us who have, remained healthy, and have a monicum of health, it'll be the end of 2021, if not into 2022. And we're still hearing from some, if you decide, hey, I'm going to get a vaccine. See, because here's what's interesting. If you think COVID-19 is a hoax and you won't wear a mask, then you won't get a shot. Like, right? I mean, if I believe it's a hoax, then why would I get a vaccine? That's idiotic. Like if I don't wear a mask because I believe it's a hoax, then I'm not going to get a vaccine. Which means what? This idea that, we're talking about trying to get to about 75% of people in the country having taken the vaccine and having some level of herd immunity that we will develop, even though we know some people have gotten the virus more than once. So is this going to be an annual piece? Even the issue around testing is a problem, y'all. So I didn't finish the thought. The New York City school district is letting people, children, pre-K 3 through 5th grade, go back to school. About 300,000 kids would fall under this category, right? According to the news report. And they're saying that they're going to test these kids every week. They're going to test these children every week, and the parents have to sign a consent form. Consent form is not as big an issue. I'm just trying to think through logistically, how do you test 300,000 kids every week? How long does it take for you to get the results back? And what do you do if you have kids who test positive? And how many children do you send home? That's man, it's logistically just a nightmare. I think most of the colleges have followed the suit of some of the early colleges, including the University of Houston, who said, hey, go home for Christmas, Thanksgiving break, and we'll see you, in January after the King holiday, or we'll see you after President's Day. I know some schools, they're not having the kids come back until February. So we'll see. Welcome to Real World, Real Talk. What's on your mind?
How you doing, Dr. Cofield?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I think the biggest issue that we have in the United States, we don't have discipline like the Asian countries do. If you notice when they first broke out in the Asian countries, you look on TV, you see everybody with masks on.
Yeah.
They're well disciplined. Even in schools, they teach discipline, martial arts, kung fu, and karate, judo, jiu-jitsu, and all of those things that they need for discipline. So that's why their rates went down. So that's it.
I appreciate that. I will tell you this, having traveled in what we call the Far East in Asia, having been to China multiple times, both Hong Kong and into mainland China. I've flown through Japan. I haven't spent a lot of time in Japan, and I've spent some time in Thailand. I think what's interesting is, especially in China, in all the years that I've been going, both to Hong Kong and mainland China, I can't think of one time on the plane or in Hong Kong or in mainland China. And I've been to Shenzhen, Guangzhou, Shanghai, Beijing. I can't think of one time I haven't seen multiple people wearing masks. And that was prior to COVID-19. I mean, wearing masks is just part of the culture. Some people wear the mask because they have breathing problems, and they wear the mask to cut down on the breathing in pollutants. When they had SARS and other respiratory airborne viruses, they don't have a problem wearing a mask. And it's just what people do. So it really wasn't a big stretch for them to wear a mask. It wasn't a big stretch at all. So it was what it was. Welcome to Real World, Real Talk. Please turn down your phone. Turn down your radio, please.
Hello?
Yes, you're on the air. Please turn down your radio.
Okay. All right, my name is Clifford.
Yeah, Clifford, what's going
I'm
on?
out here in Sunnyside.
Sunnyside, what's up, baby?
In all this police problems we had, why is it nobody has mentioned Rodney King?
Yeah, so I think I will say this to you, Clifton, and I want to thank you for mentioning that. The beating of Rodney King, I'm gonna tell you what's interesting. Officers have always used the excuse that people have gotten basically what they deserved because they did not comply. And you know, it's ridiculous. I mean, because if somebody's choking you to say, you know, you didn't comply, you're going to fight for your breath. If somebody's hitting you, you're not going to just sit there and take it, even if you try to shield yourself. Like, you're not being offensive, you're just being defensive. I don't know, Clifton, and I don't know how many of our listeners, if you have watched the Rodney King beating recently. We see people now, police officers, and some, you know, you can question whether this is progress or not, but we're seeing police officers now getting fired, and some who are going to court being charged with violations of the law for far less than what happened to Rodney King. Man, you know, I don't think people want to go back and look at the history, to be perfectly honest with you, because, man, I saw that Rodney King beating recently, and I can't tell you, man, and my response to it today was different than it was when it first happened. When it first happened, I was not shocked, surprised, because I heard stories of things like that happening to people. It never happened to me, you know, praise God. But, you know, I know I'm one crazy officer away from being there, right? It has nothing to do with where I've been to school or what I do for a living. It doesn't matter. As a black man, and for me as a large black man, I can be intimidating to some people just walking in the room. So I understand I'm a hairbreadth away from being in that situation. But man, when I saw it, my sensitivity to that is so much greater now than it was then. I couldn't believe it went on as long as it did. I couldn't believe that those men did what they did. And I will be honest with you and tell you, if it happened today, I think there would be a different result. I think. Now, that being said, we still have, for example, the issue with grand juries and charges being filed and the like. And we're seeing that come out with the Breonna Taylor case, where the grand jury members are coming forth now saying they weren't presented all of the evidence. They were presented a limited number of charges. And I'm not sure how it works in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. I've served on a grand jury here in Texas, and I know the grand jury in Texas has the power to change charges. The grand jury in Texas now, and grand jury members said, well, the district attorney office, you know, they came forward and said they didn't think they could prove these charges, and they said they didn't think they could do this, and they're right. You know, DAs come in and they tell you that. I've sat there and listened to DAs said, you know, here are the charges. We don't think we can make them stick. And if you no bill it, it's okay. And we were like, well, then why'd you even bring it in here? But that was more of a, you know, cover your own apples kind of deal. And so, you know, that's what happened. So I appreciate you raising that, Clifton. I really do. And I would encourage anybody to go back and look at that beating. And I don't know what can be done now. Rodney King has passed away. But, you know, it'd be interesting to see if his family can do or say anything. We've got time for just a couple of more callers. 713-313-4354. 713-313-4354. One of our Facebook families said, my brother was brutalized in Tulsa weeks ago. They almost killed him. Tulsa has deep-seated hatred toward our people. You know, man, racism is like the Tulsa riots were just kind of the apex or the iceberg in the harbor. But we know that, you know, the tip of the iceberg typically represents 10% of the iceberg. 90% of it lies beneath the surface. And so, yeah, it's still a problem. And I think on the one hand, we want to see people's hearts change. But until we can see people's hearts change, let's see laws changed. And let's get rid of qualified immunity, and let's stop allowing people to get away with what they have been doing. Welcome to Real World Real Talk. You're on the line. Welcome to Real World Real Talk. What's on your mind? Okay. So, you know, it is what it is. I think we're in for an interesting year. As we move into 2021, COVID-19 is here. It's not going anywhere. As a matter of fact, I think within 2 or 3 weeks after this Thanksgiving break, we're going to see numbers go up exponentially. And then we're going to get ready for Christmas, and they're going to go up again. And so I think we have a long ways to go. And how it affects us in terms of everything we do in life and living in terms of work, school, those things are still going to be hashed out. Let's check and see our phone lines once again. Welcome to Real World Real Talk. What's on your mind?
I just wanted to talk about the COVID-19 issue, as someone was speaking earlier.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, my thing is that you're right. I think in 2 weeks, we're going to find out that it's much higher. But I'm tired of hearing Black folks blaming Trump. I'm sorry. I see 2-3 times a week I pass by Turkey Leg Hut. That place is packed. Trump is not making us do that. We go to restaurants, we hang out, we go see grandma, we see everybody, and we talk about wearing our masks. But I'm sorry, I see too many of my people not doing it. And then we're going to cry and say, why, Jesus?
Well,
when grandma died.
Yeah, I agree with you in terms of our personal responsibility. I do think, though, part of the blame that people have tried to lay at the feet of President Trump has been the failure to lead by example, the failure to really talk about the importance of wearing a mask. The fact that he came out later on and said he knew how serious it was, but he didn't want to, alarm people in the country, so he lied about it. I do think, and the problem is, and this is the biggest problem, you have a group of people who take what our leaders say as gospel. And the problem that we have in this country is not just do we shut down borders from people traveling in from China, and we're going to shut down borders, people traveling in from Europe. We haven't shut down travel here in this country. And that is a major problem, because when people have been moving around in this country, I had 2 members early on who went to a family event in Detroit. Nobody said anything. Nobody said anything about, hey, don't fly in this country. Man, shut down the airlines, especially if you're going to give them money to bail them out. Shut them down, because we can't be flying all over the place, because now we're just transferring, this virus from hot spot to cold spot. And we saw it at spring break. Young people went and we saw them leaving Florida beaches and Mexico beaches and went back all over the country. And that's why I think, and I agree with you to this extent, there's a level of personal responsibility that we have to take. So I'm not going to blame Trump, I'm not going to give Trump credit. Hey, because at the end of the day, it's up to me whether I go out of the house or not, and whether or not I wear a mask and I practice physical distancing and all those things. So I think you're absolutely right. The challenge that we have is in terms of leadership. And I don't know if you would agree with me or not. For example, I'm having a hard time now believing the CDC and what the CDC says, because I believe they were unduly influenced politically when they should have been following the science. We've gotten mixed messages from them. We've gotten mixed messages from the Surgeon General. I don't want to hear anything from him anymore, ever again. I don't have to hear anything from this current Surgeon General, because he and the other people, they were so afraid to lose their jobs, and maybe they were justified in having that fear, that they would not stand to say, no, this is what we're going to do. This is what the science says, not what the politicians say. This is what the science says. And I wish everybody would have done that.
I completely agree. Everything you said about Trump, I agree. The Surgeon General obviously was afraid to say the truth. I do not disagree with any of that. Matter of fact, you sound like my husband. But all I'm saying is that I cannot blame the Trump policies for what I see my personal friends, relatives, people I know who can't stand Donald Trump.
I got you.
They're doing it because they want to.
No, I agree with you. I think that's a challenge. You're absolutely right. Listen, thank you for your call. I've got to go. I've got to get out of the way. Truth has slipped in the room, and I've got to make way for them. Thank you for being with us tonight on Real World, Real Talk on your member-supported public radio station, The Choice, 90.9 KTSU and KTSUradio.com. I want to thank my Facebook family and friends and all for listening. Listen, I need you to get ready. If you want to follow me during the week, you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at DZ Cofield. And man, we're getting ready to go into this holiday time of the year. And I've got a special holiday message that I'm going to be sharing starting December the 1st. You don't want to miss it. It's just that time of the year. As Ms. Donna Franklin said, man, it's a beautiful time of the year. And for some people, it's going to be a tough time of the year. You know, over 265,000 people, close to 270,000 people have lost their lives. There's going to be a lot of spaces under the tree that's empty, a lot of spaces at the dinner table that's empty for the holidays. And, you know, my prayer for you is that you would do your best to be your best and to make it through this season. It's going to pass. It's coming later than sooner. But I think if we hold on, we're going to make it. All right. This is Dr. DZ Cofield for Real World, Real Talk signing off. Get ready for truth. V. Michael McKay, David Goldstein, and the lovely Asia will be with you in just a moment. Take care. Hey, bud. Hey. All right, everybody. Take care. Talk to you. Bye-bye.